5 days to the much-anticipated National Convention of the People's Democratic Party, there seems to be emerging threats to the conduct of that exercise. But can the party maneuver its way through them? That's a big question. President Buhari vows to continue military onslaught against bandits and terrorists in the light of renewed calls for him to declare bandits as terrorists. Hello and welcome. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Kayode Okikelu here in Lagos, Nigeria. But just a few hours ago, President Muhammadu Buhari departed the State House for Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, to participate in a 3-day investment forum organized by the Future Investment Initiative, a global non-profit organization. Well, he will be joined at the 5th edition of the event by business executives from Nigeria, bankers, captains of industry and energy experts to discuss issues on the future of investments across the globe. Well, on the President's entourage are Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Timi Silva, Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Suberu Dada, the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Monguno, amongst others, including some top billionaire businessmen in the country. Well, after the meetings, President Buhari is expected to perform the Lesser Hajj in Medina and Makkah before returning to the country on Friday. So back here in Nigeria, there's so much more happening in the nation's political scene. And here's our political roundup.
The military onslaught against bandits, terrorists will continue until peace returns to every part of the country. President Muhammadu Buhari made this assertion today during the 2022 Armed Forces Remembrance Day emblem appeal launch at the State House. Urging Nigerians to celebrate the military as the pride of the nation, President Buhari reminded all that the renewed onslaught against the bandits in the northwest has culminated in voluntary surrendering of the bandits.
The COVID-19 pandemic
President of the Nigeria Labour Congress NLC, Mr. Ayuba Waba, is appealing to workers across the country to take advantage of vaccination provisions made by the federal government in order to reduce hospitalization and fatalities among workers. The NLC president made the appeal at a news conference in Abuja on the recent directive of the federal government that civil servants who refuse to be vaccinated will need to show test results confirming that they're negative before they can access public offices beginning from December the 1st. Members of the All Progressives Congress in Kwara South Senatorial District have expressed their support for the second-term bid of the state governor, while also thanking him for allowing one of them emerge as the state chairman of the party. Meanwhile, the leadership of the Young Progressives Party, YPP, has called for a shift from electing the old to young politicians who are capable of turning around the fortunes of the country.
We're starting off tonight with internal party politics. Well, it's exactly 5 days to what you can call the flagship of events for the People's Democratic Party. That's the National Convention. So, as I speak to you, there are a lot of meetings happening right now in the build-up to that particular exercise. But the question is, how is the party planning to sail through the threats to that flagship event? Don't forget that the lawyer the suspended national chairman of the party, Mr. Oche Secondus, wrote to the party advising the PDP not to go ahead with the convention pending the determination of a suit. But then yesterday, Governor Seyi Makinde of Oyo State, who incidentally is the secretary to the Gov Convention Planning Committee, said that the convention will go ahead in spite of another case this time around at the High Court in Kaduna. So there you have two court cases. Don't forget that last week, some candidates were disqualified. And then there were state congresses as well. And of course, the outcome, the fallout from that particular state congress across 7 states, where in some states we had parallel. You wonder how the resolution process is going when the convention is just 5 days away. Well, let's speak to the man at the helm of affairs of the PDP, Elder Yemi Akiwumi, who is the acting national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, joins us this evening from Abuja. It's great to have you on the program, Elder Akiwumi. Let me begin with one of the biggest issues that have come out, and that's the letter which was written from the lawyer to Prince Uche Secondus. I'm just wondering, how did you receive that particular letter with the contents and the issues that were raised there?
Good evening, my friend.
Good evening.
The letter in reference you are referring to, I have not seen it, but I'm aware of it. But I can answer your question very well without seeing the letter at all. The convention is a property of PDP. We have been planning for it. We have almost got to the peak of it now. And any threat cannot stop, nobody individual can stop it. We will resist it. It will be resisted by PDP as a body. So no amount of threat can make us make a U-turn. We are ready. We are go ahead. You remember when I was sworn in, I told the whole world and Nigeria particularly that I will not stay a day longer than 31st of October, which the NEC agreed upon that we should terminate our working committee. And on that note, we are working towards that now. We have almost completed. You see, my office is virtually empty. I have packed all my property, everything belonging to me personally. And virtually all of us, not me alone. We are ready to leave, and we are ready to do a transparent convention, best known, which has not been seen the type before in Nigeria. Second, knowledge to second us.
But, you know, I just wonder how you are going to go about this. I mean, you say you have not seen that letter. So let me just give you some content from that letter. Now, his lawyer referenced previous judgments from the Supreme Court and the Appeal Court. And in his words, it says that the logical corollary of the, previous, court decisions is that having been served with an application seeking to restrain the holding of its national convention, pending the determination of appeal filed by Prince Uche Secondus, the PDP will be embarking upon a collision course with the court if it proceeds to hold the convention before the hearing and determination of the application. So those, that's part of the letter which was sent to your party.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and in the PDP you have an array of lawyers. We have so many sons. We have many other. We have drafted our experts who will look at the case and treat it on its merit. And our own institution will report back to us the progress made, and we are committed at going ahead with our convention. So I believe that by the grace of God, don't think we stop the convention. Whatever need be done. Our lawyers, our experts, our lawyers, our sons, everybody will do. They will do that. They will do that, and our team will go as scheduled.
You seem pretty sure and confident that the court's decision will swing the way of the PDP. You said by the grace of God that this will not be stopped. So I wonder, what exactly is the game plan? Because for the lawyer of Mr. Secondus, he thinks that the party will be on a collision course with the court if it goes ahead with the convention on the 30th and 31st.
Do you remember Prince Uche Secondus, the chairman of the party? He's not a judge now. He expressed his own opinion. Not just like I'm expressing my own opinion. at appropriate time, wherever we adjudicate on it, we will come out. But I am assuring you that a competent court of jurisdiction will allow the PDP to continue with our planned convention.
And this raises questions really about the process that led to his suspension. And I think this is a bone of contention here. Would you say really that that process was handled very well? I mean, you've been 2 months and a day in office as the acting national chairman. But prior to that, there were different wranglings, the back and forth. Would you say that that process was done quite well for us to be at this position where the lawyer is saying, don't go ahead, you'll be on a collision course with the court?
I'm not interested in that, the case. I'm not ready to comment much as to the merit of the case. But all you remember that I was at home at Ijebu. I have challenges I have health challenges. I have left Wadata, but I am the second in command. Second to Uche Secondos. And in our party, when peradventure the number one is out of office, number two we take it out of that's just my own concern. I'm not here. I wasn't here at the time. I didn't know how it was handled or whether rightly or wrongly, but I was called upon. There was stalemate. There was crisis and confusion in the party. I came here. I salvaged the whole thing. I brought sanity into the party. I restored sanity into the party, and I removed the crisis. Right now, you will not see any crisis anywhere. Everybody is going on with his businesses lawfully.
Well, so that's one case on the one hand. The other case was the one referenced by Governor Seyi Makinde, who is the secretary of the Convention Planning Committee. He referenced a case at the Kaduna High Court. And I'm just wondering, first, the one from the suspended national chairman, Prince Uche Secondus. Now this one. Aren't these signs that there are a lot of issues that still need to be resolved within your party for you?
Let me tell you, PDP is a threat to many parties. This litigation coming up and now, they are work of our enemies. They are not, a genuine PDP will not venture to take the party to court. Whereas there's a section in the Constitution which says you don't take to court, resort to court, unless you avail yourself of all opportunities to seek redress within the party. And anybody who believes who is a PDP, a genuine PDP, will not venture to court. Because they are able to seek redress within the party. There are thousands. There are thousands in which matter can be resolved within us. So it is the hand of enemy. But whether enemy or enemy, I know God will shame them.
You're saying in essence that currently there are enemies within your party who are members, card-carrying members of the PDP.
It's obvious now. It's obvious now. We have enemies now. It's obvious. It's obvious because the reason for why we have enemy, people know that PDP is supposed to win the next 2023 election now. That's except except miracle happens that PDP will not win. PDP is always the alternative party in power now. Because the present party in power, they have disappointed Nigeria. They have messed the whole economy up. They have messed Nigeria up. Life is not safe. You cannot sleep with your two eyes closed. Children cannot go to school. The whole economy has crumbled. Naira is falling every day. Naira, as of today, Naira is 500 and something against $1. Whereas, when we hand over that time, when President Jonathan handed over, it was 150 naira to $1.
You know,
but what we see,
Pardon me. So
Yes.
when you bring up the issue about, people going to court, enemies within the party, one will naturally cast mind back to what played out during the recent, screening process for candidates vying for leadership positions in your party. So 3 candidates were disqualified, and part of the reasons given by Governor Fintiri, who chaired that particular committee, is the fact that they have taken the party to court. So would you be saying at least those 3 are also enemies within the party for taking the party to court? Because for some of them, they said they actually went to court in order to save the party.
The 3 people you are referring, they have not exhausted means of seeking redress within the party. For example, after that the announcement of the screening, there is appeal still coming. Appeal. They will have the opportunity to present their case better than before, and the appeal will see it is on the merit and adjudicate on it. So the fact that once it's qualified by a screening committee, that is not the end. It's not the end of it at all. At all. Anybody that is qualified by the screening committee is to get his paper or the paper ready and to get a good sound argument to convince the panel, the pick-up panel. If he does it very well, he will get justice. He will get good justice. I don't believe that the enemy I was referring to is not those ones, because those ones are bona fide members of our party. They know what it means that if you lose in an area, you know what the next step of our line of action is to take. They know. They will take the appropriate action. That is legitimate within PDP.
But Elder Kiwami, there are those who question why the party didn't disqualify some others who have taken the party to court in previous times. For example, there was a former governor, national secretary of the party, who took the party to court. So in making those considerations, just what came into play? Because some might say perhaps it's some form of victimization, I should say, for some of them who supported the suspended national chairman, Prince Secondus.
To start with, the chairman, the role of the chairman is the father to all committees. It's a neutral, the chairman is a neutral person to supervise all the committees. The committees, the screening committee has never reported to me up to this hour of the moment. They have not reported to me, and they will still report to me. And by the time they talk to me, I will see what is inside. I will see why a person is disqualified. If it is genuine, yes, it will be upheld. But if it is not genuine, an appeal court will overrule it.
I said earlier that, it's been 2 months and a day since you became the acting national chairman of the PDP. You said yourself that you were just sitting in your home and this fell upon you. I wonder, 2 months and a day, how has the journey been? We're due for a break in a moment, but retrospectively, you say you don't want to spend a day beyond the end of this month in office. But what has this process done to you? What has it shown you in the past few months?
The days has been so interesting to me. It has been interesting to me. I've learned more and more in party administration. What I've not known before, I've learned. But the secret I will tell you was how I managed to handle the storm that was plaguing the PDP that time. One, now I'm using collegiate system of administration, in which all my working committee members, we treat them as equal. We are equal. We are colleagues. We are colleagues, non-applications. So that is my own situation. And then anybody I discover that is aggrieved, I pacify him, I back him. It's not difficult for me. That does not remove me as the chairman. I pacify, I process, I pacify, I will invite you to my office, I pacify you, I talk to, I put words to his hearing. and they will reason.
You know, speaking of pacifying members, because I think, speaking of pacifying members, because I know that that's a big deal right now, especially following the state congresses we saw across 7 states, the fallout, and of course the recent disqualification of those candidates and some other issues that have come up. I understand that the PDP appeal committee meeting was meant to begin today. What's the update on that? Because people see that as a major tool in resolving some of the issues that have come up.
Well, yes, we are supposed to be, the appeal committee is supposed to sit today. But for reasons best known to us, it is no longer sitting today. It has postponed. And it's our own internal mechanism. I don't have to tell you that now. It's our own internal arrangement now. But one thing is that all contentious issues will be resolved, inshallah.
Well, Elder Akiwami, you're not just telling me, you're telling millions of Nigerians who are watching the PDP to see how it's conducting its affairs. I mean, you have said you're an alternative, better option, in fact, you have said, to the APC. So it's quite important to put these things out, because seeing that that appeal committee meeting did not hold, for some people might be a red flag, thinking, wait a minute, are things well in the PDP? What will happen to the convention? In fact, for your members as well.
Let me tell you one thing. PDP has a history behind of a transparent convention making. We have a history of transparent history in making conventions. And then we treat equal every human being as equal, as on their rights, not on not on what the head say. So, if you believe that if you are a member of PDP, you will best appreciate what I'm talking. That in our party, there's a mechanism for we put in place to resolve every issue. And I cannot tell you on this public domain, I cannot tell you the secret of my party, and it's never done. But what I want to take home is that the issue of anybody disqualified, anybody, whatever crisis or whatever I think before convention will be resolved everything. We will resolve everything. We will become a family, a PDP family in Nigeria.
So when will that meeting then hold? When will it start?
I'm not an Ireland now. I'm just a leader. I'm not an Ireland. I don't take a dictatorial on the party now. We leaders will bring us together. We see the best option that the date with the best convenient for us. So we choose. It's not a question of one man business. One man can, in the PDP, one man don't take decision.
After all, that's the core. After all, that's the core of democracy. Sorry, please, you can land on that.
And that is the core of democracy now.
Okay.
Democracy is the people coming together to form opinion.
Okay, so let me just put this in. I mean, speaking about the core of democracy, I mean, ensuring that everybody is brought in to make their decision count. Now, there's still a lot of talk about 2023, and I recall recently a former vice president speaking about zoning and said zoning has never been the problem, neither is it the solution to Nigeria's problems. And I wonder how the party is taking that statement, because I mean there are different interpretations to it. So for the party, because some people are saying even for these leadership positions within the party, they're wondering, is this imposition, is this consensus, what exactly is this going to be? So moving forward, on the back of that statement, how is your party handling the issue of zoning?
What the leader that said is a statement of fact. Zoning is not the problem of Nigeria, particularly at this hour of the day. The problem in Nigeria is to search for a true Nigerian who is ready to live by example, who is ready to do things that we allay our problems in Nigeria The problem of hunger, problem of economy, problem of banditry, all problems that we solve it. I will return Nigeria back to the Committee of Nations. Yeah.
Well,
Zoning has never been a problem. You remember? Wait on. Remember that this argument in the Nigerian history, in the history past history, there was a zoning that gave Muslim tickets. You remember? And why unanimously voted for that? So zoning is not a problem. It's not a problem. Where a person comes from is not a problem. But what Nigeria quarrel with is corruption and indecent behavior.
well, and I think that's a great place to leave it. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Elder Yemi Akiwumi, the acting national chairman of the People's Democratic
It's nice talking to you too.
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Good night. Yeah.
Well, we'll go on a quick break now, and when we return, we'll turn our attention to the all-important topic of security. Just stay with us. Welcome back. So tonight we visit an issue that has continued to hog the headlines for the wrong reasons. It's a threat Nigerians are all too familiar with, although the manifestation might be different depending on what part of a country you're in. For the Northeast, it's insurgency. The Northwest, banditry. Of the Southeast, attacks on the police and citizens. And in some other zones, it's kidnappings, farmers' herders clashes, and the rest. And just over the weekend, these issues were yet again highlighted, this time in an article published by The Economist with the headline, "The Crime Scene at the Heart of Africa," where, amongst other things, it was said that the complacency of Nigeria's political elite is the biggest barrier to restoring security. Well, the presidency replied, saying that though it will take time, the president is unwavering in his determination to end this challenge to public order. And the president also reiterated that today during the 2022 Armed Forces Remembrance Day emblem appeal launch, where he asked Nigerians to celebrate the military as pride of the nation. Well, indeed, the military has had its hands full with support from police and other security agencies, no doubt. But in spite of all that, insecurity still remains a major challenge. That's 6 years into the Buhari government. Why, you ask? Well, we invited the Defense Ministry to give us an insight into this nagging question and more on the program tonight, but we were told an urgent assignment came up, so we'll be doing that interview in the coming days, hopefully. But in the meantime, we're joined by an intelligence expert and former director at the DSS, as well as a security expert. Mr. Mike Ejiofor is a former director at the DSS. You see him there, joining us from our Abuja studio. And right next to him is Mr. Kabiru Adamu, a security consultant. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. Let me begin with Mr. Ejiofor. I wonder for you if you ever get asked that same question as to why insecurity lingers. And at this point, it seems to be entering more dangerous dimensions. For you, is there a simple answer to that question?
Well, there's no simple answer to such a complex security situation. Why not trying to defend it? You see, we were talking of insurgency, terrorism. A lot of countries have fought this war over years. But our own is peculiar, and I think with government efforts in trying to solve the problem, I think we should be able to look inwards and see how we can re-strategize. If you recall that calls have been made for change of service chiefs, and service chiefs have been changed, the Inspector General of Police changed, and there's a new strategy. But my worry actually is the claims by the military. I think they should be backed up with pictorials. You know, when we hear that 100 people have been killed, 200 people have been killed, 800 bandits, some people have surrendered, and yet the attacks continue. So it calls to question, what are we now doing wrong? I think, for instance, the issue of the banditry. in the Northwest. Like you said in your intro, the banditry in the Northwest, if you recall that the National Assembly has called on the government to classify these people as terrorists. Only yesterday, the Conference of Speakers also made the same call. Some governors have made the same call. So I think the government should now take it seriously by looking at the processes of declaring these bandits terrorists, because there's little difference. There's a thin line between banditry and terrorism. What I mean is that both parties use violence, threat of violence, but you know, for terrorism, it has a political aim. For academics, yes, people will argue that banditry should not be classified as a terrorist group. But if you look at the way they're operating, because banditry is about kidnapping, taking hostages, extorting money, but these people have gone beyond that. They've gone to the extent of even bringing down an aircraft, blowing up our rail line, and this has brought government to disrepute and making government look incompetent. So I think it is the right time for us now, for the government to take necessary steps to classify these people for whatever it is. Because if you ask me, not necessarily that once they are classified as a terrorist group, then the fight will end. No. But at least it will get sympathy of the international community that Nigeria is serious about the fighting terrorism, and possibly will get more support. Recall that also we have had some support, the Tucano aircraft, but it goes beyond aircraft. Because what we are facing is just not like, you know, in Nigeria lexicon, we always have issues. We talk of kinetic and non-kinetic. We are laying more emphasis on kinetic approach. But I believe that non-kinetic approach will address some of these issues, especially the issue of Boko Haram. Don't also forget that Boko Haram is a terrorist group and the fourth or third most dangerous terrorist group in the world. So
right,
if we combine it with banditry and all this, we'll have a complex situation in our hands.
So I see you've taken a dive into, I mean, one of the cores of the discussion tonight. Let me bring in Mr. Adamu to get his side to this. Now, he says that there's no simple answer as to why we have this nagging problem of insecurity, which seems to be metamorphosing as the days go by. So for you, I mean, we'll get into the part about, you know, banditry, terrorism, and all of that. But for you, what is the complex answer to why we still have this nagging problem of insecurity?
Okay, thank you, Kayode. Good evening. For me, this insecurity challenge is actually a symptom of some structural deficiencies that we have within the country. Political deficiencies, structural deficiencies, economic as well as social. So I'll quickly mention what I mean by this. The socio-economic grievance that is at a very high rate across the country at the moment. So you have, for instance, the Southeast not happy that they've not been given a chance to govern, as it were, rule the country. You've got, at the subnational level, certain ethnic groups within certain states who are very unhappy because the composition, or the dynamics within the state would never allow them to become governors. A game of numbers, a game of inability to play politics. So all of these political, socio-economic grievances are driving some of the challenges we're seeing. Then economic exclusion. The rate of poverty, the huge gap between the haves and the have-not is also a very huge issue. That's the driver of insecurity. And then, of course, if you look at the difference between certain states, in the north, my state, as an example, will have a percentage poverty rate of 87% according to MBS. And then you go to Lagos, you have 4%. How many youths are moving between Sokoto and Lagos in search of greener pastures? Then you bring the next point, which is the social grievances that are driven by sometimes hate messaging and hate speech. This movement is economic, but then the interpretation of the movement is given another dimension and, in fact, hated. And so that greener pasture they're looking for, unfortunately, they end up not having it. So that's one. Two is the lack of opportunities that is almost dominant within the space completely. Then we can also talk of weapons proliferation, which is a huge issue. And you mentioned the report by The Economist. It spoke about that. Perhaps maybe in the course of the conversation, we'll expand that. Then our borders that are porous. And then, of course, the biggest elephant in the room, our criminal justice system that does not arrest or punish offenders. Now, this is the reason. So no matter how you deploy security forces, even if we have 2 million military men in Nigeria today and another 5 million police, and these issues, these core issues that I've mentioned are not addressed and others, then we're still going to have insecurity. Of course, I haven't even spoken about corruption. It's also another driver of insecurity. So in direct response to your question, we are not addressing the root causes of insecurity. What we're doing is merely, I would describe it as cosmetic. We see the symptoms. We attempt to use boots on the ground to address those symptoms without necessarily addressing those root causes. And until we address those root causes, unfortunately, the issues would continue to grow.
Contextualize this issue of insecurity. I mean, just this morning, 17 persons were killed by armed gunmen in Mashegu local government area of Niger State. Last week, 43 people were killed in Goroyo Market, gruesomely, in Sokoto, by bandits, so-called bandits. Now, these incidents are not normal, and that's just two of series of incidents we've seen just the past few days across the country. And back to the conversation that Mr. Ejiofor got into, which is one of the solutions which has been consistently proffered in recent times is that the government declare bandits as terrorists. So we've seen the Senate, the House of Representatives, state speakers, as Mr. Ejiofor said, even governors like Governor El Rufai of Kaduna State saying that declare bandits as terrorists. So seeing the the Hydra-headed challenge of insecurity, the multifaceted nature of this insecurity, just how much of a big deal or how big a solution is this one that is being proffered in the whole scheme of things?
Well, like I said, it's not going to bring an immediate solution.
Pardon me, Mr. Ejiofor. Pardon me. You will come in a bit, but this is for Mr. Adamu. Please allow Mr. Adamu to respond, and I'll come back to you. Thank you. Mr. Adamu, please go ahead.
So I can go international. I run a consultancy, and we've delved deeply into this topic. But let me, for purposes of time, let me restrict myself to our local laws. That is the Terrorism Prevention Act as amended 2013. Section 3, subsection 1 of that act defines, in a very broad manner what terrorism means in Nigeria. And it says that any malicious act which aforethought that causes grievous harm, either to a nation or to an organization. So the question, and this is for the courts to actually interpret, is the actions of these bandits, are they malicious? Are they were they premeditated? And then have they caused grievous harm to the country or to any organization? And I'm sure lawyers and the courts will have their say in that. But for me, my role as a security risk management and intelligence specialist is to analyze what brought them and why is it that, like in the case of Zamfara, for almost 11 years, they have been active and we've not been able to manage their activity. And I'll tell you, naming them terrorists, yes, it will provide the platform for us to address the challenge. But my worry is to address this big question: who is a bandit at the moment? So much has been said about who is a bandit. In fact, the nomenclature has been so loosely used that in the Northwest, that same group carrying out that same activity is called a bandit. If you go to another part of the country, he or she is given a different name. So the worry, and this has been reflected in the research that I told you we did by my consultancy, Beacon Consultancy. You have communities of herders, and that perhaps, and this is likely, where you have a mixture of genuine herders and perhaps a few elements that are involved in banditry. Now, if you declare, for instance, the group terrorist, is the implication to use a fighter jet or a Super Tucano, for instance, to go and drop a bomb in that community in an attempt to get rid of that. So it brings its own complexity. And that is why in our recommendations, we said one of the first things to do is to disaggregate the challenge, separate as best as possible, a very difficult task, but it's doable. The bandits from the militias, quote and unquote, that are involved in herding, and then, of course, the criminals that are also involved. Very difficult,
I wonder,
doable.
I mean,
at the end of the day...
I mean, true to what you said, I just wonder how easy that will be. But in fact, you just said it's going to be very difficult separating. But just to, you know, shed more light for our viewer watching right now, let's take a look at the definition of terrorism in the Terrorism Prevention Act. While, I mean, the definition of banditry might be different across board, but at least we know what the Terrorism Prevention Act says is terrorism. So there you see Section 2 says, act of terrorism means an act which is deliberately done with malice, aforethought, and which, so Part A says, may seriously harm or damage a country or an international organization. And it goes on. And you see C says it involves or causes, as the case may be, an attack upon a person's life, which may cause serious bodily harm or death. Goes ahead to talk about kidnapping of a person. Part 3 says destruction of a government or public facility, a transport system, an infrastructure facility, including information system. And it goes on and on. It talks about the seizure of an aircraft, ship, or other means of public or goods transport. It talks about the manufacture, possession, acquisition, transport, supply, or use of weapons, explosives. Mr. Ejiofor, I mean, the Terrorism Prevention Act is quite clear when it defines acts of terrorism. And looking at the activities of bandits, do you see a similarity?
The banditry all have elements of terrorism as is constituted in Nigeria now. But the only problem I have, you see, like Kabir said, segregating them, getting the people separated is going to be difficult because they operate in ungoverned spaces. These bandits employ violence, kill people, bomb, bring down aircraft, and that's public transport. Also blow up a rail line. You see, we are looking at this as just a simple matter. Suppose the train that was carrying passengers ran into the and derails. Do you know the number of lives that will be lost? So it's not something, these are terrorists. As far as I'm concerned, we should just not shy away from it by calling them bandits. The government should follow the due process in the Terrorism Act, go to court, and declare these people terrorists. And I think, like I said, it's not going to bring an immediate solution, but at least the entire international community will also look at Nigeria as being serious. You cannot declare one group terrorist organization and leave the other. These bandits have done more harm than any other group, even more than Boko Haram. And I stand to be corrected. Boko Haram has been operating within the Northeast. Now, Borno, I think in 3 states. But in the Northwest, they are operating they are virtually taking over Niger State. They are operating in Zamfara. They are in Katsina. They are in Kaduna. They are in Sokoto. So they have taken more wider dimension than the Boko Haram that has already been declared a terrorist organization. So I think we should pursue that course to make sure these people are declared a terrorist and use maximum force, not minimum force now, to get these people to get a sanity in the polity, because 2023 is coming. And if we continue like this, we're having an election in Anambra State, and there is threat to that election because of the activities of the IPOB. These agitations, like I said, agitations in the Northeast, in the Southwest, in the southeast, the governments need to, apart from all these issues of kinetic approaches, bombing, using jackboots and all this, we need to convene possibly a national conference where all parties will come together and state their grievances. We don't have time on our hands.
So, Mr. Ejiofor, are you saying also that...
So we don't have time on our hand.
You know, in terms of the, I mean, on the back of the national dialogue, which you talk about, are you saying that even the bandits should be invited also to state their cause as to, you know, why they're perpetrating these acts? Is that what you mean?
You see, you are aware that some state governments have invited bandits. People are in contact with them. I'm not suggesting that we should get them involved, but there are people who also are in touch with them. So they should rein them in and talk to them on the futility and of what they are doing, destabilizing the country. For the southeast, for instance, and the southwest, where you have known leaders. But in this banditry and Boko Haram, you see, it has also been internationalized. We have ISWAP, we have ISIS and the affiliations. And we need to look at our local content and see how we can solve this problem.
You know, I just...
international. This banditry in the northwest is very, very disturbing.
You know, I wonder the propriety of that as well. I mean, when you recall the governor of Katsina actually saying that with benefit of hindsight, because we've seen governors actually offer, what is it, amnesty of sorts to bandits. And he said that with the benefit of hindsight, he would not have, you know, gone through with that process of amnesty to bandits. I mean, seeing that most of them even go back and become worse eventually. Let me take this back to Mr. Adamu. So, I mean, there are challenges about what exactly to do. I mean, the carrot and stick approach, is it maximum force? Is it dialogue? I mean, you've heard governors, in fact, a certain governor of Kaduna State saying, in fact, the military should go into the bushes, the forest, and eliminate, neutralize anybody found in those forests. Now, there were questions about collateral damage and the rest. So, a lot of options on the table, but how do we maneuver this?
Coyote, I started by reeling out what I call the drivers of insecurity. And I mentioned that the elephant in the room is the weak, ineffective, and inefficient criminal justice system, where you have a situation where offenders carry on with their offenses and they are not arrested, they are not prosecuted, then unfortunately the deterrence element within every criminal justice system is no longer serving the purpose that it should serve the purpose. So I don't want to, pick up one issue and stick to it. So as an example, going into the forest, for me, is an act in futility. For the simple reason is that forest that we're talking about straddles about 5 states. And not only 5 states, it goes into another country. So when you go into that forest, and in most times you announce it that you're going into that forest, before you even go there, most of them would have left. The people you are likely to meet there are innocent people who don't have the capacity and capability to move. So why don't you now do a holistic approach where you use the entire instrument of our national power? There are 27 MDAs, ministries, departments, and agencies in security. Then we also have the capability through our Ministry of Foreign Affairs to contact these neighboring countries, and then the multilateral agency of ECOWAS to now make sure that whatever approach we're doing is holistic. I don't want to start discussing, issues that I know will just end in futility. It has to be holistic. It has to be born out of intelligence. And it would have not just intelligence by the military, but the entire intelligence community. I'm sure Mr. Ejiofor can speak better about that. But the idea, the point I'm trying to make is, unless we carry out these actions in a holistic manner and not just knee-jerk approaches, where we look at those core drivers of insecurity, then unfortunately, you will invite us again, I'm sorry to say, in a couple of years, with Mr. Ejiofor, and we'll still be speaking about it. We need to look at the issues holistically. We need to address the drivers of insecurity, before we can start talking about containment. We're not even discussing containment. That's what worries me. The approaches are not necessarily that of containment. They are not intended, for instance, to end the challenge, as it were. They are merely there to prevent for the period. And then, of course, because it's impossible to sustain those efforts that we're seeing currently, were challenged, in terms of the ability of the government to fund some of those security operations that are ongoing. Right. So they are going to stop after a period. And when they stop, the actors will regroup, and then we're back to where we are, unfortunately.
Well, Mr. Adamu, I certainly don't look forward to having this sort of conversation with you in the coming years. And I think it will be important to state some of those issues. We'll never get tired of ensuring that those solutions are put forward. So we're rounding off in about 2-3 minutes. So, gentlemen, when you say, for example, Mr. Adamu, that we need to tackle this holistically, the president had a meeting with heads of the security apparatus, and the issues were raised. In fact, the Anambra election was raised as well. The president saying that the election must hold, even if it means that the security agencies will overwhelm the state and ensure that the election would hold. So we have these meetings from time to time. The question now is, if we don't want this to end in an exercise in futility, as Mr. Adamu has said, Mr. Ejiofor, who should champion this? I know this is a question that has been raised, but if we're not getting the kind of results we should get, who then should champion this?
Well, you see, the issue of championing is the government, because the primary purpose of government is security and welfare of the people, as enshrined in our Constitution, Section 14(2)(b). Now, the government should champion this. And if you look at some statements coming from top government functionaries, uncoordinated statements, it is even generating more problems. Some people will come and tell you that they will declare a state of emergency in Anambra State. Do they have such authorities to say that? And the president will come out to tell you the election must go on. So there needs to be coordination of people talking on behalf of government, because this is also heating up the polity. People will be accusing some government functionaries of. So we should be constructive. Not only government functionaries, we should also caution our politicians on the way they make statements, because these statements they make are capable of inflaming passion and making the situation worse. So we all hands must be on deck, but government is the major driver to ensure that there's security in the country.
And especially all hands must be on deck. And just to be clear, I think the Attorney General said particularly that the option of emergency is on the table, not particularly saying it will be declared. But Mr. Adamu, your closing thoughts on this in terms of championing this cause. If you can do this in 30 seconds.
Okay, unlike my co-discussant, I see government as involving both the federal, the state, and local government, and then, of course, the three arms of government, the executive, the legislative, and judiciary. So I think I mentioned earlier on that our national power needs to come together. All of these levels of government, all of these different attributes of government needs to be brought together to address this. And for that purpose, I'm advising that an expanded National Security Council that would involve governors and perhaps even ex-presidents and some, if possible, traditional rulers be invited, so that our leadership can have this discussion and agree among themselves. When certain governors come out and make certain statements that they should never do, let them say it in that council, and then let the issues, if it's a grievance, let them address it, so that by the time they come out, what we as Nigerians will see is a single leadership, irrespective of political differences, and at least for the purpose of solving this security challenge. I think that would help reduce some of the tension that we're having at the moment, and I'm sorry to say deficit in leadership, especially at some subnational levels.
Well, gentlemen, quite instructive action points you have given us. Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former director at the DSS, as well as Mr. Kabiru Adamu, security consultant. We'd like to thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us on the program.
Thank you.
And that's the show for tonight, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikelu. You have a beautiful night.